Welcome back, everybody, to another segment of the Educational AD podcast. We're going to be right back with today's guest, but as always, we're going to give a shout out to our sponsors. Now, you've heard me say this many times before. These are all companies I used as an athletic director. They're all great companies. You should be using them too. So take 3 minutes, listen to our shout outs, then go and visit these sponsors. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you did. Here we go. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Gipper. You know, your students are on social media, and if they're not seeing content that celebrates their accomplishments and promotes your program, you're missing out on a great opportunity. Go to Gipper.com. Their team will have you creating world-class content in seconds, whether it's a social media post to celebrate a big win or an entire newsletter on social media to let everybody in your community know all the great things your program has accomplished. The website is Gipper.com. Check them out today. We also want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com to get started, whether it's more security, more customization. The Hometown team is going to help you make the best online ticketing solution. It's hometownticketing.com. We want to say thanks to Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform you're going to use every single day, whether it's scheduling or rosters. Their athletic clearance and eligibility platform alone is worth the price. Go to homecampus.com to get started. Don't forget to mention the podcast, homecampus.com. We want to say thanks to Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. My assistant AD, along with thousands of others, got his master's degree through Ohio University, and it was a great experience. It's very affordable, just 20 months, totally online. And you also complete 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. Go to ohio.edu/info/MAA. We want to thank our good friends at Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. You've heard me mention their score tables for years. We had one at our school. It was just tremendous. But those video boards can really have an impact in your gym for student athletes, for school messages, and for advertising. Go to sidelineinteractive.com to find out more information about their score tables as well as their video boards. That's sidelineinteractive.com. We want to thank our good friends at Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years. As an athletic director, I made sure our school was a Huddle school. And everybody in our program liked Huddle. Our coaches, they loved Huddle. Our student athletes loved the videos that were available to them. And our parents loved the streaming, but there is a lot more. Go to huddle.com. Join the 8 million users. Turn your school into a Huddle school. We want to say thanks to Snap Raise. If you've ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and been disappointed in the results, you need to go to snapraise.com. It's hands down the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school because it works. Go to snapraise.com. Find out all the ways that they can help you and your programs. Snapraise.com. We want to say thanks to Vital Signs Wall of Fame. Their interactive touch screen, that's right, I said touch screen video boards are a great way to show off your school record boards for all the teams, for all the events, or your school's Hall of Fame, or simply tell your school's unique story and history. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Don't forget to mention the podcast, vitalsignswalloffame.com. And we want to thank Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. Athletic directors already get feedback, but a lot of times it's from a small group that just wants to complain. Now, Athletic Surveys will connect you to that group so you can hear their concerns and hopefully address them, but they're also going to connect you to the 98% of your stakeholders that support your program. And having that type of data, that information is incredibly valuable, especially when you're meeting with a frustrated parent, or maybe your principal, or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. athleticsurveys.com. Welcome back, everybody, to another segment of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going to Chicago today, and we're going to be visiting with Sarah Greene-Falk. Sarah has an incredible background in sports and athletics. She's going to share that with you. She has her own platform that she's going to share with us called Psych Edge. She's a sport and performance psychology coach. She's also, an athlete, a coach. She was a model, and we're excited to have her on the show today. Sarah Greene-Falk, welcome to the Educational AD Podcast.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Jake. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, for our listeners, we're recording this on December 11th, so it's going to be very timely when you listen to it. Sarah, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that quick bio, where you were born, where you grew up. Maybe take us up through your own high school and college days, and then we'll take a break. But what's the Sarah Greene-Falk origin story?
Yeah, no, thanks for the opportunity. Well, I was born in the suburbs of Chicago and raised Northwest and Southwest Chicago suburbs. Um, my family, I remember a couple of my aunts were nurses, and one day my dad asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was probably 3, and I told him that I wanted to be a nurse like my aunts. And his response was, well, why wouldn't you want to be a doctor? So if that gives you a little bit of an idea of the culture of my family that I grew up in, I was very fortunate. So my grandparents didn't make it through high school, but both my parents had graduate degrees and worked their way through school. And my brother and I were very athletic. We tried almost every sport and activity. We both stuck with swimming. Did swimming since we were probably 6 months, and then started competed at age of 8. Both did show choir, and then I also did softball. And then for cross training, I did cross country, track and field. I also played piano, basketball, even though I'm only 5'1", but I was point guard. Um, and then in middle school and high school, I was swimming year round, and that started to burn me out for sure, feeling like I was missing out on other parts of my life. So I ended up dropping swimming at that point, even though I was really good on varsity and everything. And I did keep show choir and softball and some of those other things. So for college, I knew that I wanted to get away because even though I was in the suburbs, I wanted a more rural environment. So I started off my undergrad at Creighton thinking I was going to do physical therapy in Omaha, Nebraska. And then I realized that I liked mental health better. And so it was just more unpredictable. And so then I completed my master's in kinesiology, specializing in sport and performance in Wyoming. And then I attended Northern Colorado for my counseling psych master's degree. So that's kind of how I started off, Jake.
Wow. Appreciate you sharing that. I just love hearing the stories. Um, you know, your neighborhood growing up, you said suburbs, and said you and your brothers, did all the different sports. Um, I'm a big moments guy. Can you think of a moment, maybe from back in the neighborhood or even, in your grad work, but can you think of a moment that at the time, it really didn't seem like much, but now looking back with wisdom, perspective, coaching others, you can say, hey, that was a significant moment for me. Anything stick out for you?
Yes. Um, I was sophomore starting pitcher, and there was no other pitcher for my coach to put in. And I was walking batter after batter, and I was getting really frustrated. And she just never gave up on me. And I just had to keep gritting through it. She basically told me like I could tell by her face she was not taking me out. There was no one else to put in. And that was a big moment for me where, in those moments you got to really dig deep and make certain decisions and push through. And those were really hard moments.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that story. Very personal, but a great example. Um, Didn't play softball. Our daughters didn't do too much softball growing up. They were more volleyball, basketball. But as an athletic director, I've been to a lot of softball games that my teams were playing, and I've seen that situation. And standing, behind the backstop in the bleachers, it's easy to say, "Well, guys, just throw strikes." It's just so easy to say that. Um, was your coach, obviously it was an encouraging moment, but from, I guess, a tactical technical standpoint, did she say that, just throw strikes, or just, slow down a little bit so you've got more control? Or what was her advice? Because that is a tough situation for a kid, a coach, and for an AD. I was hurting for some of our kids.
Oh yeah, no, and I look back on that and I was hurting for me and my team and anyone who was even watching, to be honest. It really kind of surprised me that she was still so hopeful and positive and had faith in me and just told me like keep throwing strikes. That's all she said. She's just like just throw strikes because I know when you throw strikes, like, and so it's not that I wasn't, it's that obviously, you've got some foul tips, you've got some where they're actually hitting the ball. So yeah, I think it was a pivotal moment because in a lot of ways, like I was grasping at straws, wishing that I had something else up my sleeve that I didn't. And then I was also really surprised by the support of my coach and her belief in me.
Wow. Let's go and give that coach a shout out. What was that coach's name?
This is terrible, but she was a new coach. And so I honestly don't remember her name. This is terrible.
Oh my gosh, I'm right there with you, Sarah. Somebody asked me on the spot about, hey, who was your, freshman basketball coach? Uh, his name was John. I can't think of his last name right now. So I'm right there with you. Um,
Well, thanks.
let's go and jump ahead to college. You mentioned you started out, physical therapy at Creighton, and then shifted. Um, they're both obviously related to sport and performance. Was there a tipping point, or again a moment that it just kind of resonated with you? Hey, this, sport performance, mental performance, that's where I want to be. Any, like I said, another moment that made that happen?
I think I was always looking for what was up my sleeve. What could I do to be different, to be better? And that was, I don't know if that was ingrained in me as a child, like I described that story with my dad, but it definitely feels like that was kind of ingrained in me. And not that what I was doing wasn't good enough. It was just, how can I build on this? How can I make this better? How can I be better? And what do I need to do that? And so I knew that I always loved sports. I loved the culture of it. I loved doing it. Every weekend was a softball game, a swim meet, an invitational where we're driving to Rockford or out of state. Like, and that was just my life. And so when I, got to college, I knew that I wanted to go towards athletics. But then when I kind of figured out, wow, like this psych stuff, and then I was thinking about those that I competed with, and some that went to nationals and maybe even Olympic trials, and then thinking about those in the majors. And I'm like, wow, like I could really use this stuff to support them. And how can I do that? And so I think it really just kind of all kind of came together naturally for me. But those were some of the pivotal moments that I can recall.
Oh yeah, no, and it makes perfect sense. So good for you. Looking ahead, and the theme of this is cool, but it's also going to be given back. Service. I think many coaches feel that same calling. Let's go and take our first break. For our listeners, we're visiting today with Sarah Greene-Falk. She's got, as you just heard, an incredible background in sports. We're going to hear more about that. But let's take that first break. We're coming back. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Gipper for their support of the podcast. Your student athletes are on social media, so are a lot of their parents. And if they're not seeing content that celebrates their accomplishments and promotes your program, you're missing out on a great opportunity. Go to Gipper.com. It's used and trusted by over 20,000 high school and college programs. And the Gipper team's going to have you creating world-class content in seconds. Maybe it's a social media post to celebrate a big victory. Maybe it's an entire newsletter telling your community all the great things that your program, your student athletes are accomplishing. You'll find it all at Gipper.com. Don't forget to mention the podcast. That's Gipper.com. We also want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing. You know, Hometown is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. And whether it's more support, more security, or more customization, the Hometown team is going to help you make the best decision for online ticketing. Did I say it's the leading digital ticketing provider for schools and colleges? Go to hometownticketing.com. Don't forget to mention the podcast, hometownticketing.com. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. We're visiting today with Sarah Greene-Falk. She's going to tell us all about her program called Psych Edge, Sport Performance Psychology. But Sarah, you took us up through your collegiate and graduate days. Share your journey with us. Very few of us get to start right out of college in that dream job. So, what were some of the stops along the way that have led you to Psych Edge?
Oh, good question too, Jake. Thanks. Um, I did have an internship at the end of my bachelor's with the Omaha Police Department, which was really cool because again, we're talking about performance. And I had a general rotation, and that was really cool. Really fueled a passion for like forensics in a way. And just that experience in itself was really interesting. Also, College Counseling Center had a partial internship there in Colorado. Substance abuse and treatment programs, where I also did, I ran domestic violence groups. So, again, just really seeing kind of all sides of clinical counseling work, because, again, whether we're athletes, whether we're performers, life is going to happen. And so I just really felt like, hey, this way I could kind of be prepared for a little bit of everything. Then my first actual job out of college was adventure-based counseling. And if anyone knows high and low ropes courses, I worked with at-risk youth and I got trained on doing rescues and knots, and that was just really fun. Um, and then we know experiential learning, we get really quick results. And then I was in a little bit of private practice, and then I had some athletes during that time. And then I worked in EAP. So I got a certificate in industrial and organizational psychology, thinking business psychology might be kind of cool to dip my toes into. So employee assistance is where companies will hire us to provide them services, whether it's psychoeducational workshops or mental health services for their employees, like six amount of sessions per year per employee. And this is how companies can show that their employees are valued and appreciated. So in the end, there's less turnover and companies make more money. And so that was really interesting. I worked a lot with executive coaching, crisis situations like people taking their own lives, or C-level executives, some conflict management, and then a lot of psychoeducational workshops for large groups and such. Um, and then when um, when COVID happened, that's when things just really started to switch. And I was in the EAP world until March of 2020.
As you're going through each of these steps, we always talk about you should be where your feet are. Focus on the current job. I think in the coaching world, sometimes many of our coaching brothers and sisters, they're always looking ahead to that next job, looking for greener pastures. While you were at each one of these stops, was going out on your own and starting your own program, was that an idea? Was that a long-term goal? How did that all fit in with, wow, just a great variety of experiences that you've had a chance to be a part of.
Yeah, that was the retirement plan. The retirement plan was to have my own practice and to really specialize in sport and performance. I mean, I was able to have that focus to a point because obviously companies, corporations, like everyone wanted to perform, everyone wanted to do their best and be their best. I even did a year of coaching swimming when I was in my undergrad at Creighton. And so I kind of always had that. It was just manifesting in more, I guess, of a well-rounded way because of the route that I ended up taking. But yeah, that was the retirement plan. I just ended up doing it early.
Well, again, congratulations. Yeah, you're obviously much younger than I am, but I always tell people that retirement is vastly underrated. It should be available to at a much earlier age. Um, as you were working in, like I said, with organizations, um, how was your approach different? Um, I guess in a big way, I'll make the question easy. Was your approach different in a big way working with organizations as opposed to maybe working with a team or an individual client? Obviously those foundational principles are still going to be there, but um, how did you approach that, working with a much larger group than say one-on-one?
Yeah, I really just did my best to understand if it was, let's say, a team manager, what are you guys looking for? What is going on that you are really wanting us in now or this program now? And really trying to feel that out. So if someone's like, yeah, we want stress management, I'm like, okay, so tell me a little bit more about your team and what's going on and how many people and those dynamics. So really just trying to meet them where they're at and understand their goals as well as the makeup. And that helped, like you said, the fundamentals are still there, but that just really helped shape it. And then I think also helps keep their interest because if it's totally foreign to them, they're like, well, I can't identify with that. Like, why? Yeah. So just really trying to meet them where they're at.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. Every individual is going to have their perspective, their experiences, their own journey that you're going to work with, and it makes sense that, you're going to be doing that with a company. Yeah, good answer. Um, Let's go and take a break. I really want to give you a chance to dive into, your program, Psych Ed, Sports Performance Psychology, Psychology Coach. So let's take a break. And when we come back, I'm going to have Sarah share with us all about Psych Ed and why you, as a listener, should go to her website and check out all the services and resources that are available. So we'll be right back. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We'd like to thank our good friends at Home Campus for their support of the podcast. Home Campus is a platform that you're going to use every single day, whether it's scheduling or rosters or results. Their student athlete eligibility and clearance platform alone is worth the price. Go to homecampus.com to find out all the things that they can do for you. That's homecampus.com. We'd also like to say thank you to Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Now, I didn't get my master's at Ohio, but my assistant athletic director did, and it was a great experience. It's very affordable, just 20 months, totally online. And while you're earning your master's degree, you're also completing 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. To get started, just go to ohio.edu/info/MAA, the Ohio University Online Masters. And we'd like to thank Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. You've heard me mention our Sideline Interactive indoor score table at our school, probably one of the best purchases I ever made. But take a look at their indoor and outdoor video boards. They can really add a new dimension to your game day experience for student athletes and for sponsors. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. You can schedule a live web demo. That's sidelineinteractive.com. Check them out today. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Sarah, I appreciate you sharing, your journey with our listeners so far and with me. But let's talk about Psych Edge. Okay? Let our listeners know, what it is, maybe how it got started, and then maybe, what's included, why they should, go to your website.
Yeah, really excited about Psych Edge and to tell you guys about it. So I basically started Psych Edge to help student athletes, adults, just any kind of performer. I think I mentioned that situation in softball, and I think we've all had many of those situations, whether we're freezing in our first talk at school or talk in front of a new team or, whatever that is. And I want to give people the tools to figure it out quickly, to support them, and then also have them learn these skills. Because, in my opinion, these should have been skills that we have had all along, that we should have probably learned when we were kids in elementary school, slowly but surely. And so, I like I said, I was a retirement plan, and when I was part of a larger ex worldwide expansion in the employee assistance world, and when COVID happened, it just all just shut down, and so I was part of that broad layoff, and I decided at that point I needed to go back to private practice in some way. And I met somebody here in town. I'm in Naperville, Illinois, and she said, "We would love for you to join us. And we also need you to be an independent contractor." And I knew that starting my own business was going to be a lot of work, but it was COVID and I had been laid off, and this would be a gradual progression. So it ended up being perfect timing. And then I also had time I started creating in my mind, like, is there a process that I would want for people to be able to gain this knowledge and this information? And how do I do that? And so that's kind of how I came up with my program. And then I started seeing people via telehealth, individually, small groups, doing any kind of guest speaking or talks. Yeah, so I have a little bit of a private practice where it's just general counseling, and then Psych Edge is general. It's coaching, even though I am a licensed counselor, but that does give me the ability to see people anywhere in the world, as long as we can just correlate our schedules via telehealth. So.
Yeah, no, and again, I want to make sure I give the website correctly. So the website where they can get more information is, okay.
Yeah, it's www.psych hyphen ED as in dog, G as in girl, E as in Edward.com. So psych-edge.com.
Right. And the website is very self-explanatory. You really need to check it out. Um, we're going to take a deeper dive in our next segment into, one of your programs, but athletic directors are a different breed. So let's pretend you're speaking to some old cynical athletic director in Florida, like me. Um, Talk about, and again, don't mention, names or schools or things like that, but talk
Sure.
about what they might expect. Maybe they want to, they've got a coach or they have a team that just, they need, these are my words, an intervention. Um, Share an experience that you've had with a team, a coach, an AD, so they can kind of get a feel for what it might be like.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that to connect a little bit better. I hear a lot of times that the problem with a lot of athletes or the struggles that coaches and ADs have is what's in between their ears. And that they just don't fully understand, and then they don't necessarily know how to help them. And if you're an AD, like your job is to do that, right? If you're a coach, like, yes, maybe being aware of some of these, mental things, but your job is to coach. And so having this type of program already done for you that not only emphasizes mental health, but confidence, resilience, performance anxiety, awareness. I think that's a big one, especially with younger like kids, eighth grade, freshmen, sophomores, sometimes even a little bit older, where we're like, oh, don't they realize that they're doing this? And so really helping them understand each of these pieces and taking that load off of the athletic directors and the coaches and being like, here you go. Got pre-assessments, got five modules that are split up into small, manageable pieces, 15, 20 minutes. They can do them on their phones with their own logins. And then the same pre-tests are post. So now we not only have science-based coping skills to give them for life, because I have seen it take off in their personal lives, their professional lives, their communication skills, their emotional intelligence, all of these things have evolved. And that's another quiz, emotional intelligence, but also being able to see it, not just in the behaviors and their understanding, but also with this pre and post test that's evidence of those accomplishments.
Oh, wow. I love it. And let's do this. Let's go and take a quick break here. But when we come back, I'm going to ask Sarah to share. She spoke of those five modules. She's not going to give away the program, but she's going to share, what those modules are and how they can impact you as a coach, as an AD, or if you're an athlete listening. So let's take that break. When we come back, we're still going to be visiting with Sarah Greene-Falk of Psych Edge, and that's Psych edge.com. We'll give that again at the end of the podcast. Let's take that break. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We'd like to say thank you to Huddle for their support of the podcast. Now, you've heard me say before, as a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school. And our coaches, all of our coaches, they just loved the tools that Huddle provided. Our student athletes loved the videos. Our parents loved the streaming service, but there is so much more. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to say thanks to Snap Raise. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and been disappointed in the results? Well, those days are over. Go to snapraise.com. It's hands down the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school with tremendous success. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it because it works. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you just found it. Go to snapraise.com. And we'd like to thank Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards for all the teams, for all the different events, or show off your school's Hall of Fame, go to Vital Signs Wall of Fame and take a look at their interactive touch screen. That's right, touch screen video consoles. It's also a great way to share your school's unique history and brag a little bit about your proudest moments. The website is vitalsignswalloffame.com. Make sure you mention the podcast. They'll give you a nice discount. vitalsignswalloffame.com. Welcome back. We're visiting again with Sarah Greene-Falk. Her program is called Psych Edge. She is a sport and performance psychology coach. And Sarah, you were mentioning part of your program is a five module presentation. Can you share just a little bit about these modules? And again, for our listeners, athletic directors and coaches, why should, and coaches you should, why should they reach out and sign up for this program?
Yeah, this program gets me super excited because ever since COVID, I feel like it's really catapulted mental health to the forefront. We've had the Olympic Committee do their thing, and it's just been this like top-down effect, and that just gets me so excited to be putting psychology into sport and performance because it should have been here the whole time. Um, there may be some that are not on board yet with that, and I totally get that. And so this can be something that can also fill that void for you, fill that gap for you. Um, Basically, it's a program, 5 modules that's done for you. Like I mentioned before, there's pre-tests and post-tests, and they're very short. They're also valid tests, so they've been used in research. I pulled them directly from there. Make it short and sweet because I know that student athletes, time is precious. And then they can either show the bits and pieces as, let's say, coaches to their teams and kind of work 15, 20-minute segments with them, or they can have their athletes do it on their own individually and be like, kind of assigning the homework. I do know some, teams that will do like a mental health, mental training, like 15, 20 minutes after every practice now. So that's just a couple examples on how you can use it. I've also had a team in particular have me come in after each module and basically talk about the presentation, and then they ask me questions and that sort of thing. Module 1 is awareness, and it goes into some breathing exercises and just really teaches them how the awareness and the breathing is really the key to our control over our physical body and our thinking. Because when we are not breathing correctly, our heart rate and blood pressure are off, and our thoughts are not always irrational and not always in our control. Module 2 is SMART goals. Everyone knows SMART goals. This is smarter goals. So this goes into more flexible thinking, and this is also my process to attaining flow state more readily. Flow state is basically we you have fun, right? Time flies when we have fun. That is flow state. Module 3 is going into self-talk, and it talks about distorted thinking. Like I mentioned, the irrational thoughts, being able to acknowledge them, right? The awareness. And then what do we do with them from there? And then that also can go into like cue words and cue phrases and how to implement that. Module 4, growth mindset. So Dr. Carol Dweck did all her research here in Chicago. And growth mindset, I believe, is that key to resilience. So if we have the ability to learn from our mistakes and not sit in that, beating ourselves up, we're going to be able to come back at it and come back at it because that perseverance is really hard when we're falling down. And I don't think everyone knows how to handle that, especially these days. That's a big thing I see. That is split with emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, having the ability to take a step back, kind of look at things from other people's perspectives. So utilizing empathy, but then being able to step back into our emotionally charged situation and maybe make a different decision, now having all of that information given the goal at hand. And the last one is my favorite, and that's visualization, because I did my thesis on visualization, the first person versus third person, what is included. And then I also support it with the neuropsychology research that goes into the brain scans. Again, I make it very simplistic. I will put the science behind it. Every athlete I have run into or performer is like, well, why? Why do I need to do that? Well, this is why. This is the research to prove it. Try it. So I call it making our mental game plan. So you can put it together however you want, and then you'll end up seeing the results after probably 2 weeks of, within the first couple weeks. You can do a module a week. You can do it however you need to. But that's kind of I call it the peak performance online course. So that's That's going to be on my website. You can go ahead and just purchase it individually. If you do sign up on my website for my quarterly newsletter, you get half off the course. And if you want to buy just one course, like if you're just interested in visualization, sign up for my newsletter, you get 40% off, and that's through the end of the year.
Well, I appreciate you sharing those details and also how to get it. And, I've made this comment before. I'm sure a lot of people have. I don't think there's a coach in America that would dispute the value or the need of mental performance training, sport performance training. The trick is convincing those coaches to devote some time during the week to developing that skill, just like they do for conditioning or strength or shooting baskets or whatever. And I love how you really went into the details about this doesn't take a tremendous amount of time, but the time that you are investing, it's going to pay off with some big dividends. Appreciate you sharing that. Well, Sarah, this has been so cool spending some time with you, hearing about your journey, and appreciate you providing these resources for our listeners. But we're not done yet. We always wrap up with the athletic director's toolbox. Now, you're not an AD, but you certainly know your way around the world of athletics. We're going to take our final break, hear from Athletic Surveys, who sponsored this segment. And when we come back, I'm going to challenge you to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let you put 3 items in their toolbox. So let's take that break. And when we come back, we're going to see what Sarah Greene-Falk is going to put into her new athletic director toolbox. We want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment. Athletic directors already get feedback, but a lot of times it's from a very small group that just wants to complain. Athletic Surveys is going to connect you to that group so you can hear their concerns and hopefully address them. But they're also going to connect you to the 98% of your stakeholders that support your program. And having that data is incredibly valuable, especially when you're meeting with a frustrated parent or student athlete, or maybe your principal or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We've been visiting today with Sarah Greene-Falk. Has a tremendous background in athletics. You need to visit her website, psychedge.com. But right now, I'm going to task her with sending out a brand new AD on their very first job, but I'm only going to let her put 3 items in the toolbox. So, Sarah, what 3 items are going to go into your new athletic director toolbox?
Well, what I've really found to be probably the most helpful, and I think it's harder when we're younger, but listening. It's hard sometimes to, if you're a new athletic director or in a new leadership position, listen to those that you are leading. Listen to those who have been in those positions before. Also listen to yourself. There's just different pieces. I think that we're in such a hurry, or we're very excited and we're feeling this angst, which again is good for performance, but we still have to kind of keep that in the zone and tame it. So I think listening, and then when we're listening, we're not talking. So
Yeah, I love it. I share all the time how I think it's one of the most important tools and one that I failed to start using until much too late in my career. So thanks for sharing that one. What else do you got?
yeah, me as well. Um, my second one, this is what I have seen most of all with whether we're parents of teens or young adults, coaches, also athletic directors, is a mutual respect for not only our colleagues, but also these student athletes. Because even though they are not adults and they're not grown and we're still nurturing that. They still need us to know that we are listening to them, that we care. And that mutual respect and listening is going to reflect that. And then that relationship is now pivotal to anything that we have to ask of them. They're going to be more likely to perform because of that mutual respect in that relationship.
No, again, it's one of the most frequently mentioned tools by athletic directors and other professionals. So I'm right there with you. We hear so much about, oh, they disrespected us, or that coach disrespected me. Well, it's two way, but from a coaching AD aspect, it needs to start with respect to build that relationship. Great stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's two tools. Do you have a third one for our listeners?
Yeah, I would say my third one would be uh, growth mindset, which also bridges into like perseverance and then again resilience. So growth mindset using loss or things that didn't go our way as opportunities to grow and do better. A fixed mindset is where we think that, well, this is what I've got and that's just the way it's going to be. Like kind of like I can't change almost. Can't and failure are not in my vocabulary. And so I like to look at the growth mindset as I'm going to continue to grow and move forward. And if an athletic director is going to continue with a growth mindset, there is going to be a top-down effect. If we look at like organizational psychology, there is a top-down effect. Then you have your coaches and your team basically as an admin perseverance when challenges arise. What are we going to learn from it? What are we going to do differently? And again, that's resilience. It's getting back up and getting back at it. And I can tell you the comebacks are always better.
Everybody loves a good comeback story, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, this has been so much fun. If I was going to give you a fourth tool, what would that fourth tool be, Sarah?
Um, I would say probably the peak performance program, to be honest, because I really think it encompasses everything. It's going to give that leadership rule, it's going to give the leadership stuff that we just talked about. It's going to teach growth mindset. It's going to teach the listening and the awareness. It's going to teach all of these life skills that can enhance our relationships, our performances, and our lives. And honestly, it leads to a lot of people feeling a lot better and happier and better able to control and manage, their emotions and their lives. And when that happens, you have a lot of confident people. And that's really my goal is to give those tools out. So yeah, definitely the peak performance program would be number four, Jake.
Well, great set of tools. Thanks so much for sharing. That's a perfect transition. One more time, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out, find out more about the modules or the services, what's the best way they can get a hold of Sarah Greene-Falk?
Absolutely. So the website again, www.psych-edge.com. You can go to my website, sign up for the quarterly newsletter. I also have a button on the homepage that you could have a free consultation. Probably, a good 20-minute chit chat, making sure it's a good fit. And if you have questions on how I can be helpful or apply things for you, get on my schedule. And then you can also email me directly, Sarah, Sarah, and then PSYCH hyphen edge.com. And then if you do want to, I have a lot of texters out there, my high school and college student athletes, and I am totally cool with that. My work cell, you can text me is 630-219-0339, and that's also on my website. And feel free to follow any of my social media. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I do have a Facebook business page, and I do have some YouTube videos from some previous interviews. And there's also samples in there on my YouTube. I took some excerpts of the videos of the Peak Performance online course. So I've had some coaches do presentations to the athletic directors, and vice versa to say, hey, take a look at this program. Here are some samples of like what we might be getting. So I think that could be also be very helpful for our viewers.
Oh, yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that. And you left one out the way you and I connected. Sarah's also on LinkedIn. So make sure you add Sarah Greene-Falk to your network. Check out the modules, at psychedge.com. Sarah, thanks so much for sharing with our listeners. All the best as we, move into the holiday season. And we're going to have to get you back on the podcast down the road, do an update.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Jake. And I love what you do. And I just wanted to add to the cause of just being able to support the community the way that you do. So thanks again for having me.
Oh, well, you're very kind. Thank you. For listeners, we want to say thanks to you and also remind you that we upload the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews to the Educational AD podcast on YouTube. We do this just about every day. We share stories and best practices. So hopefully you're going to join us for the next episode of the Educational AD podcast. Thanks again.